Earth received its first message from the stars on a Tuesday morning. Scientists at the SETI facility in New Mexico detected an unusual pattern of signals that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. Within hours, experts confirmed what humanity had long suspected. We were not alone. 6 months later, the first CRYVAC ship entered Earth orbit. The alien vessel dwarfed anything humans had ever constructed. Its sleek purple-black hull absorbing, rather than reflecting sunlight. World leaders gathered at the United Nations to coordinate humanity's response. They claimed to be peaceful explorers, said UN Secretary General Martinez, addressing the emergency session. But we must proceed with caution. Admiral John Winters sat in the back of the room, arms crossed, watching the proceedings with narrowed eyes. 25 years in the Navy had taught him to look for the threats people didn't want to see. The CRYVACs have offered to share technological innovations beyond our imagination, the Secretary General continued. Medical advances that could eliminate disease, energy solutions to end our dependence on fossil fuels, even faster than light travel. When the meeting ended, Winters approached Dr. Olivia Ramirez, the xenobiologist who had been appointed to the first contact team. "You believe them?" he asked without preamble. Ramirez pushed her glasses up. "The biological samples they shared are genuine. Their physiology is fascinating, silicon-based rather than carbon. Their diplomatic team has been transparent about their biology." "Not what I asked, Doctor." She hesitated. "They've given us no reason to doubt them. But their social structure is rigid, hierarchical in ways we're just beginning to understand." In the months that followed, CRYVAC's representatives established embassies in major cities. They provided technological schematics that helped engineers develop more efficient solar panels and batteries. Medical researchers began testing treatments for previously incurable diseases. "Look at these results," Dr. Paul Bennett said, showing Admiral Winters the latest data from clinical trials. Cancer remission rates are up 70% with the CRYVAC's treatment protocols. Winters nodded but said nothing. That night, he met with General Maria Garcia in a secure facility beneath the Pentagon. Satellite imagery confirms they've established 12 observation posts in Earth orbit, Garcia said, displaying the classified images. "They claim they're for scientific research." "And you believe that?" Winters asked. "What I believe doesn't matter. The President has approved their request for access to our deep space monitoring network. That network maps our entire defense grid." Garcia's face remained expressionless. "I'm aware, Admiral." At the United Nations, the CRYVAC's ambassador addressed the General Assembly. His translucent skin shimmered under the lights, compound eyes sweeping across the gathered humans. "My people have traveled the stars for 10,000 years. The translator rendered his clicking speech. "We have uplifted many young species, guiding them to their potential. Earth will become a valued member of the galactic community." The assembly erupted in applause. In the observation gallery, Winters leaned toward Ramirez. "Notice he didn't mention what happened to any of those other uplifted species." Ramirez frowned. "You think they're hiding something?" "I know they are." Later that week, Dr. Ramirez was granted access to the CRYVAC's vessel. Their liaison, a junior officer named Ikrik, showed her their biological laboratories. "Your species adapts quickly," Ikrik observed. "Most take generations to understand our technologies." "Humans are curious by nature," Ramirez replied. "Indeed, the High Command finds this quality most interesting." Something in the way Ikrik said "High Command" made Ramirez pause. "I thought your people were explorers and scientists. All serve the Imperium in different ways." Back on Earth, Ramirez reported the conversation to Winters. "They've never used that term before." "Imperium." Winters nodded. "I've been authorized to implement preliminary defensive protocols." Quietly. "You think they mean us harm?" "I think history teaches us that when a technologically superior civilization meets a less advanced one, it rarely ends well for the latter." He looked out the window at the CRYVAC ship hanging in the sky, visible even in daylight. Let's hope I'm wrong. The attack began without warning. At 300 hours, the Krivax vessels in orbit suddenly powered up their weapons systems and fired upon Earth's 7 orbital stations. Within minutes, each station was reduced to debris. Captain Lisa Blackwood was on duty at Luna Base when the first attacks hit. The massive view screen showed Earth's orbital stations erupting into flames. Emergency alarms blared throughout the base. "Get me Earth Command," Blackwood ordered her communications officer. "All channels are jammed, Captain," he replied, his voice tight with fear. "They're using some kind of signal interference we've never seen before." Blackwood gripped the command console. "Launch all defense vessels. Alert status read." The base shuddered as the first Krivax energy beam struck the lunar surface 2 kilometers away. On the tactical display, Blackwood watched as dozens of smaller Krivax ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere. "They're targeting military installations first," her tactical officer reported. "Washington, Moscow, Beijing, New Delhi, all under attack." On Earth, Admiral Winters was awakened by the emergency alert. He rushed to the Pentagon's underground command center, where General Garcia already stood before a wall of screens showing the unfolding disaster. "How many ships?" Winters asked. "At least 50 new vessels appeared from behind the moon," Garcia replied. "They must have been hiding there for weeks. Our orbital defenses are gone." Winters watched as the tactical display showed red icons streaming toward Earth's surface. "Launch all fighter squadrons. Activate the ground-based laser defense network." "Already done," Garcia said grimly. "They're having minimal effect. The Krivax shields are deflecting our weapons." At Stanford University, Professor Alan Murphy worked frantically at his computer terminal. As one of the few humans granted access to the Krivax historical database, he had been searching for patterns that might explain their true intentions. "It's here," he whispered as ancient text scrolled across his screen. "The Krivax aren't explorers. They're harvesters. They'd done this before." Murphy downloaded the data to a secure drive as the building shook from nearby impacts. The translated text described previous civilizations that had welcomed the Krivax, only to be conquered and stripped of resources. Most disturbing were references to biological harvesting of compatible species. At Luna Base, Captain Blackwood ordered evacuation procedures. "Get everyone to the emergency shuttles." "What about you, Captain?" her lieutenant asked. "I'm staying to transmit all our data to the secure Earth servers. Someone needs to know what happened here." As the last shuttles departed, Blackwood initiated a transmission to the hidden receiver only Admiral Winters could access. The base trembled as Krivax weapons battered its shields. "This is Captain Lisa Blackwood of Luna Base. The Krivax invasion force is larger than we estimated. Their technology exceeds our most advanced weapons. I've attached all tactical data we've gathered on their attack patterns." She paused as part of the ceiling collapsed nearby. "Admiral, if you're receiving this, implement Contingency Protocol Sumnus. It's our only hope now." The transmission cut off as a massive explosion rocked the base. In cities across Earth, civilians watched in horror as Krivax vessels descended through the clouds. The ships that had once appeared elegant now revealed their true nature, bristling with weapons, deploying smaller craft that began systematic attacks on infrastructure. Dr. Olivia Ramirez worked with emergency responders in Chicago, treating the wounded as buildings burned around them. "I should have seen this coming," she told a fellow doctor as they stabilized a patient. "The signs were there." "No one could have predicted this," he replied. "Admiral Winters did," she said quietly. At the Pentagon, Winters received Blackwood's final transmission. His face hardened as he entered his authorization code into a terminal that hadn't been activated in over a decade. "General," he said to Garcia, "it's time to wake the sleepers." Project Somnus had existed for 15 years, known only to a select few military and civilian leaders. When Admiral Winters entered the final authorization code, automated systems across the solar system began to activate. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, in a hidden base carved into the rock of Mars, within an asteroid in the belt, in the clouds of Venus, and in the depths of Earth's Pacific Ocean, 5 massive ships stirred to life. Director William Grant stood in the control center of the Pacific facility, watching as technicians worked frantically to complete the evacuation protocols. "How much time do we have?" he asked the chief engineer. "Kryvax forces will detect our power signature within 6 hours," she replied. "We need to be gone before then." Grant nodded grimly. "Begin boarding procedures. Priority lists have been transmitted to all section leaders." Project Somnus had been humanity's insurance policy, a last resort if Earth ever faced an extinction-level threat. 5 enormous sleeper ships, each designed to carry 250,000 humans in suspended animation to distant stars. The ships had been built in secret, using resources hidden from public budgets, and constructed by workers who believed they were creating deep space research stations. In Houston, engineer Kate Foster worked to finalize the propulsion systems on the 5th ship, named Horizon. Her team had been scheduled to complete testing next month, but now they had less than 5 hours. "The quantum drive isn't fully calibrated," she told her supervisor. "We're looking at 87% efficiency at best." "It'll have to do," he replied. "We launch at 1800 hours, ready or not." Outside, the sky glowed orange from burning cities. Distant explosions punctuated the constant rumble of warfare. Kryvax ground forces had landed in major population centers and were advancing rapidly. At a military base in Colorado, Commander Ryan Phillips organized the defensive perimeter. His orders were simple: hold off the enemy long enough for the evacuation transports to reach the Somnus facilities. "They're 3 kilometers out and advancing," his sergeant reported. Phillips surveyed his forces, a mix of regular military and hastily armed civilians. "We need to buy those people time. Every minute we hold this line means more lives saved." The Kryvax moved with frightening efficiency. Their battle suits enhanced their already formidable strength, and their weapons fired pulses of energy that cut through concrete and steel. "Sir," a soldier called out, "they've breached the eastern perimeter." Phillips grabbed his rifle. "Fall back to position Bravo. Trigger the demolition charges." Around the world, similar battles raged as military forces fought desperate holding actions. Most knew they were fighting for time, not victory. In Washington, D.C., what remained of the civilian government met in a bunker deep beneath the city. The president had been killed in the initial attack, leaving the Secretary of Agriculture as the highest-ranking surviving official. "Project Somnus is our last hope," Admiral Winters explained to the assembled leaders. "We can't defeat the Kryvax conventionally, but we can ensure humanity's survival." "How do we choose who goes?" asked a senator, her face pale with shock. "Lists were prepared years ago. Genetic diversity, essential skills, age distribution. The selections were made to give the colonies the best chance of success." At the Somnus facility beneath the Pacific, Dr. Samuel Martinez worked to complete the cultural and scientific database each ship would carry. Everything humanity had learned, created, or dreamed, compressed into quantum storage. "We're the modern Library of Alexandria," he told his team. "But this time, nothing will be lost." As Kryvax forces pushed deeper into human territory, Lieutenant Diane Collins led evacuation operations across North America. Transport craft, disguised as civilian vehicles, carried selected individuals to the hidden launch sites. "Keep moving," she urged a group of frightened civilians. "Don't stop for anything." A child looked up at her. "Where are we going?" Collins managed a smile despite her exhaustion. "To the ships that will save us all." The 5 sleeper ships represented humanity's greatest technological achievement. Each vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, their hulls composed of materials reverse-engineered from alien technology encountered decades before the Kryvax arrived. Dr. Samuel Martinez walked through the cryo-storage section of the Defiance, checking the final preparations. Row upon row of suspension pods filled the massive chamber, each designed to keep a human in perfect stasis for up to 500 years. "How many are loaded?" he asked the medical supervisor. "Just over 200,000, she replied. "The remaining pods will be filled in the next 3 hours, if we have that much time." Martinez nodded, his face grim. "The Kryvacs have breached our outer defense perimeter. We need to accelerate the timeline." Each sleeper ship utilized technologies that humanity had kept hidden from the Kryvacs. Propulsion systems based on principles discovered in the wreckage of another alien vessel that had crashed in the Arctic in 2047. Defensive shields adapted from ancient technology found buried beneath the Gobi Desert. Most importantly, the revolutionary temporal displacement system that made Project Somnus truly unique. Lieutenant Diane Collins helped guide the last evacuees aboard the Perseverance, hidden in its underground facility beneath the Arizona desert. "Move quickly," she instructed. "Directly to Level 5 for processing." A tired woman clutching 2 small children looked at Collins with frightened eyes. "Will we ever see Earth again?" Collins hesitated. "Focus on what's ahead, not what we're leaving behind." In orbit around Jupiter, the Legacy was already preparing for departure. Captain Frank Rogers supervised final systems checks, aware that Kryvac scout ships had been detected in the vicinity. "Engine status?" he asked his chief engineer. "Quantum drive at full capacity. Temporal systems show green across the board." Rogers took a deep breath. "Begin pre-activation sequence. We launch in 30 minutes. Each of the 5 ships carried a different cross-section of humanity. The Perseverance held primarily North and South Americans. The Defiance carried Europeans and West Africans. The Heritage was filled with East Asians and Pacific Islanders. The Legacy held South Asians and Middle Easterners. The Horizon would carry a carefully selected mix to maximize genetic diversity. At the Pentagon's Underground Command Center, Admiral Winters received reports from each vessel. "Horizon's launch preparations are delayed," his aide reported. "Kryvac's forces have penetrated to their secondary perimeter." Winters' jaw tightened. "Tell Engineer Foster to implement emergency launch protocols. They need to get that ship out of there." At the Horizon facility, Kate Foster received the orders with a sense of dread. Emergency launch meant skipping final safety checks and risking a 15% failure rate in the suspension pods. "Begin loading sequence for sections 15 through 30, she ordered. "We'll have to leave at half capacity if necessary." Outside, Commander Ryan Phillips and his remaining forces fought to hold back the advancing Kryvac troops. They had established a defensive line 2 kilometers from the hidden entrance to the Horizon facility. "Use the EMP grenades," Phillips shouted over the sound of energy weapons. "They disrupt their battle suits temporarily." A soldier tossed one of the devices toward the advancing aliens. It detonated in a pulse of blue energy, causing several Kryvacs to stumble as their equipment malfunctioned. Human fighters used the opportunity to target the vulnerable aliens. Inside the Horizon's control room, Foster received word that Kryvac's forces had broken through the final defensive line. "Seal all entrance points," she ordered. "Initiate emergency departure sequence." The massive doors to the underground hangar began to slide open as the ship's engines powered up. They wouldn't have time to load all the designated passengers. In the Defiance medical bay, Dr. Martinez prepared himself for suspension. As one of the project leaders, he was among the last to enter a pod. "The database is complete," he asked his assistant. "Yes, sir. All human knowledge, culture, and history, as much as we could preserve, has been uploaded to each ship's core memory." Martinez nodded and lay back in the pod. "Then we've done all we can. The rest is up to fate." As the pod closed over him, his last thought was of Earth, the blue planet that had been humanity's only home for its entire existence. Until now. The heart of each sleeper ship contained a device unlike anything humanity had built before. The quantum entanglement core pulsed with blue-white energy, its components arranged in patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. This was the culmination of Project Somnus, a technology that bent not just space, but time itself. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Julia Waters monitored the final countdown sequence. Her ship, hidden beneath Europa's ice, had been the first to complete loading. "All systems are go," her first officer reported. "Temporal displacement drive is at full power." Waters opened a secure channel to the other 4 vessels. "All ships report status." "Perseverance standing by," came the reply from Arizona. "Heritage ready for activation," reported the captain from Mars. "Legacy in position," confirmed the Jupiter vessel. There was a momentary pause before the final response came through. "Horizon launching now. We're at 62% capacity, but cannot wait any longer." Waters nodded grimly. "Understood, Horizon. May your journey be successful." On Earth, in the deepest level of the Pentagon bunker, Admiral Winters and Dr. Olivia Ramirez watched as data streamed in from the 5 ships. "The Kryvacs have detected the energy signatures," Ramirez said, pointing to the tactical display. "They're diverting forces to intercept." "Too late," Winters replied. "Once the activation sequence begins, nothing can stop it." 3 years earlier, in a classified meeting that only 12 people had attended, scientist Victoria Spencer had explained the theoretical principles behind the temporal displacement technology. When activated simultaneously, the 5 cores will create a cascading effect. She had told the assembled military and civilian leaders, "Think of it as a wave rippling through time and space." "What exactly will this wave do?" the Secretary of Defense had asked. Spencer's expression had been grave. "That depends on the target. For the ships and their passengers, it creates a bubble of altered reality, essentially moving them outside our timeline while physically transporting them to predetermined coordinates. And for everything else," Admiral Winters had pressed. "For the Kryvacs specifically," Spencer had hesitated. "Based on our analysis of their biology, the temporal wave will interact with their silicon-based cellular structure in unpredictable ways." Now, as the activation countdown reached 0, those theoretical predictions were about to be tested. Kate Foster stood on the Horizon's bridge as her ship broke free from Earth's atmosphere. Through the viewscreen, she could see Kryvacs warships turning to pursue them. "They're locking weapons," her tactical officer warned. "Engage quantum shields," Foster ordered. Time to activation. 30 seconds to synchronized activation. The ship shuddered as Kryvac's energy beams struck the shields. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. "Shields at 60%. An engineer called out. "We can't take much more of this." Foster opened the communication channel to the other ships. "This is Horizon. We're under heavy attack but holding. Preparing for activation." In the control center beneath the Pacific, Director William Grant watched as energy readings from all 5 vessels peaked simultaneously. The Kryvacs' attack on his facility had breached the outer levels, but the core remained secure. 10 seconds to activation, the system announced. Grant thought of all the humans who wouldn't make it to the ships, billions who would face the Kryvacs without the protection of the temporal displacement. He hoped the technology would work as designed. 5 seconds. On each ship, the quantum cores pulsed faster, the blue-white energy building to blinding intensity. 3. The Kryvacs commander in orbit around Earth detected the unusual energy pattern emanating from the human vessels. Something about it triggered an ancient warning in his neural implants. 2. Abort the attack, the commander ordered, suddenly understanding what the humans had created. "All ships withdraw immediately." 1. Across the solar system, 5 points of light flared with impossible brilliance. For a moment, the ships seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, after images stretching across space like ghosts. Activation complete. Then they were gone, vanished from normal spacetime. And the wave began to spread. The temporal shockwave expanded outward from where each ship had been, invisible to human eyes, but devastating to the Kryvacs. The wave moved at speeds beyond conventional physics, rippling through spacetime like circles on a pond. Lieutenant Commander Gregory Nelson had been hiding in a secret observation bunker in the Rocky Mountains when the activation occurred. Through his enhanced binoculars, he watched as the Kryvax ground forces suddenly stopped their advance. "What the hell?" he whispered. The aliens seemed confused. Several dropped their weapons. Others began moving erratically, their coordinated attack formations dissolving into chaos. Through his scope, Nelson could see something happening to their armor. The sleek purple-black material seemed to flicker, as if struggling to maintain its solid form. Nelson activated his secure communication device. "This is Outpost Sierra reporting. Something's happening to the Kryvax forces in Sector 7. They appear to be malfunctioning." Similar reports flooded in from around the globe. Kryvax ships in orbit began drifting off course. Communication between their vessels broke down. Their weapons systems shut down one by one. In the remains of a research facility outside Boston, Dr. Elena Rodriguez studied the readings on her instruments. As one of the few scientists who had worked on the theoretical aspects of Project Somnus, she understood what was happening. It worked, she told her small team of survivors. The quantum entanglement has created a temporal disruption field that specifically targets silicon-based cellular structures. "In plain English, Doctor?" asked the soldier guarding the entrance. "The Kryvax are falling apart at the molecular level," she explained. "Their technology, too, since much of it is grown rather than manufactured." The Kryvax Supreme Commander, orbiting Earth in the flagship vessel, struggled to comprehend the disaster unfolding around him. His officers reported system failures across the fleet. Ground forces were no longer responding to commands. "What weapon is this?" he demanded of his science officer. The science officer's translucent skin had begun to show dark patches. "It appears to be a targeted temporal distortion. Our biological systems are experiencing accelerated entropy. Can it be countered?" "No, Commander. The wave exists partially outside our time reference. We cannot." The officer collapsed, his body suddenly aging centuries in seconds. On what remained of Luna Base, a single human survivor watched through a cracked viewport as Kryvax ships began to disintegrate. First, their hulls lost structural integrity, becoming porous and brittle. Then the vessels themselves seemed to fold inward, collapsing into twisted shapes before breaking apart entirely. Lieutenant Commander Nelson led a small team out of the bunker to investigate a downed Kryvax ship. They approached cautiously, weapons ready, but found no resistance. Inside the vessel, the aliens lay dead or dying. Their bodies showed strange symptoms: crystallized skin, calcified internal organs, cellular structures that had become rigid and shattered. "It's like they've turned to glass," one of Nelson's team observed. Nelson nodded. "Not glass exactly, but their silicon biology is breaking down at the atomic level." The temporal wave continued to spread throughout the solar system, reaching even the most distant Kryvax outposts. Their mighty invasion fleet, which had numbered over 200 vessels, was reduced to drifting debris within days. Dr. Rodriguez explained the phenomenon to the remaining military leaders. The sleeper ship's activation created a quantum field that specifically disrupts the Kryvax biological and technological systems. It's as if they suddenly exist slightly out of phase with our reality. "How long will this effect last?" asked a general. "Based on our calculations, indefinitely. The wave has fundamentally altered how their molecular structures interact with our timeline." In the Pentagon bunker, Admiral Winters received confirmation that Kryvax attacks had ceased worldwide. The aliens were dying, their technology failing, their mighty armada reduced to floating wrecks. It wasn't a conventional victory, he told the assembled leaders, but humanity survived. "What about the sleeper ships?" someone asked. "Where are they now?" Winters looked at the star map projected on the wall. If the calculations were correct, they'd been displaced not just in space, but in time. They could be thousands of light years away by now, and possibly centuries in the future. Dr. Ramirez studied the data from global monitoring stations. "The Kryvax aren't just defeated here," she said. Reports are coming in from our deep space probes. The temporal wave is still expanding, affecting Kryvax outposts and colonies throughout neighboring systems. You're saying this isn't just about Earth? Winters asked. 20 years had passed since the activation of the sleeper ships. Earth was healing, its cities rebuilt from the ashes of the brief but devastating Kryvax War. Humanity had survived, though at great cost. Nearly 2 billion lives lost during the invasion and its immediate aftermath. Dr. Olivia Ramirez sat in her garden, watching the sunset. At 87, her hands were gnarled with arthritis, but her mind remained sharp. The small device on her desk beeped suddenly, pulling her attention away from the orange-red sky. "Computer, display incoming signal," she said. A holographic screen appeared above her desk. Data streamed across it, a pattern she had been searching for since the end of the war. Her heart raced as she recognized the quantum signature. "It's them," she whispered. "They made it." The signal was faint, traveling across vast interstellar distances, but unmistakable. One of the sleeper ships had successfully reached its destination and established a colony. They were sending a message home. Ramirez contacted Admiral Winters immediately. Though retired now, he had remained involved with the recovery efforts and the search for the sleeper ships. "I've confirmed it 3 times, she told him when he arrived at her home. "The signal matches the Perseverance's quantum frequency. They've established a colony on a planet orbiting Tau Ceti." Winters studied the data, his face showing the first real joy she had seen in 2 decades. "Have you decoded the message?" "Only partially. But they're alive, John. They made it." News of the signal spread rapidly across Earth. For a population still recovering from near extinction, it represented the first real hope in years, proof that humanity existed beyond their damaged world. In New Washington, the global capital built to replace the destroyed original, President Clark addressed the United Earth Council. "Today we received confirmation that Project Somnus succeeded," she announced. "Our brothers and sisters reached the stars and have begun anew. Humanity exists not just here, but across the galaxy." In the years following the war, Earth had changed profoundly. The destruction of most infrastructure had forced humanity to rebuild from first principles, incorporating recovered Kryvax technology where possible. Nations had given way to a unified global government, the old divisions seeming petty after facing extinction. Peter Blackwood, son of Captain Lisa Blackwood who had died at Luna Base, led the scientific team analyzing the Perseverance's signal. "They've established a self-sustaining colony of approximately 240,000 people," he reported to the Council. "The planet they call Novaterra has Earth-like conditions. They're thriving." Further messages arrived in the following months. The Legacy reported success in the Epsilon Eridani system. Then the Heritage made contact from a planet orbiting 61 Cygni. Each ship had found a habitable world and begun the process of building a new branch of human civilization. Only the Horizon and Defiance remained silent, their fates unknown. Admiral Winters and Dr. Ramirez visited the memorial in Central Park that honored those who had given their lives during the war. A special section was dedicated to the sleeper ship passengers, not listed as dead, but as voyagers. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" Ramirez asked. Winters looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. "Not in our lifetime. The temporal displacement took them not just across space but time. According to the signals, they experienced the journey as mere months, while 20 years passed here. But someday their descendants might return to Earth, or our descendants might reach them." The most unexpected consequence of the sleeper ship's activation had been the collapse of the Kryvax Imperium throughout known space. As Earth re-established communication with other star systems, they discovered that the temporal wave had continued to expand, destroying Kryvax presence wherever it encountered them. Species that had been subjugated for centuries found themselves suddenly free. Many reached out to Earth, grateful for their liberation, offering alliance and friendship to the humans who had inadvertently saved them. On the steps of the Science Academy, once the center of Kryvax studies, A new plaque was installed. It read, "From our darkest hour came our greatest achievement. When faced with extinction, we scattered the seeds of humanity among the stars. We endure." Dr. Ramirez visited it often, reading the words and thinking of those who traveled so far to ensure humanity's survival. Though she would never see the new worlds they had found, she took comfort knowing they existed, human voices speaking, laughing, and singing beneath alien suns.